So here we have a 66 Ford Mustang, new customer, came in with a lot of problems. We're road testing it. It's got an engine knock, it's got electrical problems, so we can tell that the engine needs to come out. So we had it rebuilt by our local engine builder, and you can see here it's a long block, Edelbrock heads, roller rockers, custom camshaft, and additionally it was a 302, but we stroked it out to 347. Got forged pistons. Here we're priming the engine as he manually cranks the engine over. It's going to be a good strong motor. He's putting intake gaskets on here. So we're going through the engine. We're also going to do an electrical rewire on it. So this thing's going to get a major upgrade in electrical, the engine. We're installing a higher stall torque converter because of the camshaft profile. We're going to go through the pulley system. We're going to make everything good so we can drive it away with a little bit more power. No oil leaks. Here you can see Roy putting on the intake. And we're putting stainless steel bolts all the way around where possible, and we're polishing the heads. Just a little bit of extra touch on the motor. Right now we're fitting a Mattson Radiator in there. We're going to have to cut out the radiator core support a bit and modify it to fit it in. These are 3-pass radiators for maximum cooling. It especially helps to have these if you have air conditioning on a hot day when you're cruising somewhere in 100-degree weather. These 3-pass radiators with big single and dual fans and fan shrouds really cool the engine down. As you can see here, he's getting ready to fit a TCI torque converter. It has about a 2500 to 2800 stall. We need that with the 350 differential that we're using, the 9-inch Ford in it. It'll help the car idle better, and it will launch better and be easier to tune. And then of course with every engine build, we detail out all the engine in some kind of black satin or whatever happens to go with the motor. You can see all the parts laid out there. We're going to do final assembly on all the pulleys and the front accessories, the water pump, fuel pump. We upgraded the alternator to a 175 amp alternator because of the stereo and all the electric fan and the electronics. We need to have plenty of amps and voltage to run all this stuff. This particular motor had some alignment problems with the V-belts, so we're checking the shim on them and aligning them up there. You can see Roy and I looking at the alignment. If they're not aligned correctly, then these belts are going to squeak and they'll wear prematurely, and they'll even get thrown off under acceleration if they're not right. And we check for interference everywhere. So now we're putting the engine in. We always take the valve covers off sometimes because we'll scratch them when we put them in. And right now we're making a torque converter cover because the car came in without one, so we try and make sure that these things leave with all the right accessories and covers that they need. We can pretty much make anything we need for these cars. It's all these small things that polish the apple on these engines. So in goes the Mattson Radiator. We've already put the alternator and the pulleys on. Now we're setting the radiator in. We've already checked it for clearance. The thermostat's going in. And we're going to be making some custom radiator tubes for it, upper and lower, out of steel. Sometimes we'll make them out of stainless steel, sometimes we'll make them out of steel and paint them black. It just depends on the engine, the budget and whatnot, but you can see a nice polished radiator, some formed radiator tubes. Everything's looking good. So you can see on here that Roy's putting in the spark plugs and the wires, and we're making sure that the wires are laid down right and they're positioned carefully so they don't burn on the exhaust or get caught in the belt area. And the other thing that you'll see here is that we have a FiTech fuel injection on it. And this one's a 600 horsepower FiTech, which means it just got larger injectors. The software program's the same. All these cars get a PCV system. It's good for the crankcase, good for the motor. Right now, James is making some stainless steel transmission lines, so he's going to hook up the tranny to the Mattson Radiator. And we run all of our radiators with coolers in them, the automatics. And so we generally don't need trans coolers unless we're really running a high stall torque converter, which would overheat the transmission. So we try and keep these things practical for the street. As it turns out on this car, the wiring was a mess, and now we're putting in an American wiring harness, complete fuse panel, which means you got to tear everything out of the car and figure out what you need as far as wiring and fuse panel and circuits for fuel injection, for air conditioning, for cooling fan, for the radio and the stereo. And our wiring, it's clean. It's got all the right connectors. You won't find butt connectors on anything we do. Everything is soldered and pinched and put on with shrink wrap. And when you look in there, everything's routed nicely. Usually a wiring job takes us 2 to 3 weeks. By the time we strip it down, take the dash out, figure out the circuits we're going to use, how many relays, and then Lewis has an idea how to go about it, and then it's about putting in time on the car, and so we try and leave him alone and not bother him with other jobs so we can stay focused on the wiring and not make any mistakes. And of course you can see once we're done with the wiring, we put some insulation on there and try and make it look nice. So now he's putting in the main harness and everything has got its place, and so that takes a while to load that in and get all the wires coming out in the correct positions. But the sign of a good wiring harness is you don't have extra wire inside there and looping and going nowhere. It's all got a place, it's all tied in, it all looks like it has a destination. Here's the dash. They got autometer gauges in it, and he's laying out a dash circuit, and all these wires he's going to connect to a 13 or 19 pin Deutsch connector, so that when we pull the dash out, we can unplug the dash unit as a complete module, and we don't have to sit there and cut wires. So it's accessible and serviceable, and it shows expertise and care for the job. Now he's running a circuit check on everything, but he's gone through the gauges and the turn signals and the charging system. He's checked the fuel injection to see if it's getting the right battery plus, and now we're looking at the tune on it and putting in all the data for the FiTech fuel injection. So we're already loaded in the base data. Now we're starting it up again and checking the tune and let it learn. And then it's going to take a couple of weeks or less for us to do the cold start drivability. And usually starting it up and running it and warming it up is not a big deal when it's cold. It's the warm-up hot soak starts that are a problem. So now we're looking at data, and we're going to let it learn once the engine is warmed up and the O2 is working. That's the easy part. Once we get all that done, Then we check it for cold start again, cold start warm up, and hot soak start. All those things require different fuel delivery and temperature controls, so that it may be in our shop for a week or two just to get all that right. After a week or so, everything was great, and we delivered it to the customer, and he's happy as can be.